Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I'm here with a good friend of mine, Miss Noma Lango Michelle Moses from Healthy Black Woman. How you doing? How you doing today, Noma?
I'm doing great, boys, and it's Mrs.
Oh, Mrs. Noma Lango Michelle Moses. And so, Noma, I wanted to ask you a question. That I thought you would have something to say about this. I saw. I was looking at some of my daughter's friends, and a lot of them, are young women in their early 20s, and many of them have kids. And I couldn't help but notice that when I would see the kids with the mothers and the pictures of the kids with their mothers on Facebook and stuff like that, I rarely saw fathers anywhere. I didn't see much mention of a father. I didn't see the father in the pictures. A lot of them, you ask about the dad, and they, in many cases, the response wasn't always positive. Sometimes it was. In a couple of cases, it was, but it was usually more negative than positive. And I couldn't help but feel that maybe we've got to the point where we almost expect our kids to not have fathers or to be raised in single parent households. And I wanted to know what you kind of think about that. I mean, are we being old fashioned by kind of thinking that the father's role is important here, or have people? I mean, has the world just kind of lost its mind? I mean, what do you think?
Well, you hear so much about that 70% statistic or 72% statistic of homes in the Black community being led by Black women. And, sometimes people are frustrated or irritated by it, but actually, that statistic, if you look around, is true, or at least we're close to it. And for all I know, maybe we've even surpassed it. So, is it happening? Absolutely, it's happening. Should it be happening? My answer, if you know anything about me, should be an obvious no. No, we should not be comfortable with it, boys. But I've had this conversation in varying forms, and one of the things that I can talk about is what I call generational patterns. A lot of if you see a woman right now who has a kid and no husband or no father actively involved in that child's life, she's likely grew up in that situation, and was raised by someone who was also raised in that situation. So that's what they've normalized. So if you ask them, is that normal? Then of course it's normal. But should it be is another question, and no, it shouldn't be. And I come from a two-parent home, from two, and was raised by two people who also came from two-parent homes. So that's what was normalized for them. And I do see the differences, and I do see the benefits of having a two-parent home. I mean, we've said these things over and over again, and unfortunately, I think that when you sometimes point out things that people don't want to face, or they're in the middle of, it can feel like you're pointing fingers at them and judging them, when in fact you're just pointing out some facts. But I will regurgitate them again. We talk a lot about, I've seen a lot of posts lately with Black women talking about children who are molested by family members and so forth. Guess where the highest rate of molestation happens? It's in the home where the father's absent and he's not there to protect his children. Just a simple thing like that. The number of young girls, teenagers who fall pregnant without meaning to, again, that's usually in a home where the father's not there. Not to say it doesn't happen in two-parent homes. And the list goes on and on and on. Children who have trouble in school, who end up killed. A lot of those children come from homes where the father is just not there as their protector and their provider. So should we accept that as normal? Absolutely not. Who would want to accept all those things as normal? But at the same time, I think that there is consideration that, yes, and we know it's not normal, but why does it keep happening?
Well, it's interesting because as you're talking, I'm literally pulling up a study that does say that, according to the University of Pennsylvania Medical School, single parent households double the risk of sexual abuse. They say that adult men who grew up in one parent households are more likely to have been abused as children. They also, let's see, I'm reading, I don't know exactly what this is going to say. I'm literally reading as we talk. Though all one parent homes appeared to have imparted risk for abuse in one parent homes was higher in the lower income groups. Let's see here. So there's more. There's more to the study, and people can look it up at uphsu.upenn.edu. And the quote here by one of the scientists is that children being raised by one parent are at a greater risk for many things as they grow up, including health-related risks such as poorly controlled diabetes and asthma. We now must add childhood sex abuse to the risk picture. So, when you add that to, just even the financial implications. Many of us have seen this study that says that the median net worth of a single black parent. I don't know if it was a single black
A
woman.
single black woman
Yeah,
is
single
five
black. Yeah,
dollars.
it's $5, right? And so I think that when you point out these facts, it's interesting because you'll have some people who will say, "That's right, right on. We got to do something about this," and then you have some people who get really offended, really angry at you because you even brought it up. Um, where do you think that reaction comes from? I mean, because we're clearly not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but it would be irresponsible not to mention this information. Why do you think people react so emotionally to that?
Having occupied this space, and you've occupied it even longer, of, having an ongoing conversation about Black people's issues and understanding why they react to a lot of things, what I hear a lot is people are talking about what's happening and not talking about why it's happening. And then, of course, there's you can look at the bigger picture of, people deal with systemic racism, institutionalized racism, and you look at all those things, the after effects of slavery, all these other things play into it. And I don't dispute that. I do still think that personal responsibility, and that's another key word that makes people angry. Then you get accused of respectability politics. But at the bottom line for me is I still think that you can be the generation that has that turnaround. And I've seen people who do that, where they come from maybe a line of all kinds of dysfunction, and they decide that it stops with me. I'm going to make different decisions, and I'm going to do something different. And they may not 100% succeed, but just that shift in thinking makes a difference. Um, I think that's why it is. Some people feel helpless. They feel like they can't control it. And they just feel like you're not looking at the bigger picture. Well, I'm not looking at the bigger picture.
Interesting. Well, let me throw out some stats, and I think that for the black community, it's important to have this conversation because 73% of black children. Well, let's start with this. 72% of black children are actually living in single parent households. Many of us know that, which is close to the 73% that are born out of wedlock. Which, again, I'm not here saying one thing or the other or judging people on it. It's just a fact. And so it's important to understand that growing up in a single parent household, it differs from being born out of wedlock, but also growing up in a single parent household differs from growing up without the involvement of a father. So I think if we're going to talk about single parent homes just as a factor, we would have separate conversations about what out of wedlock births or fatherhood involvement, right? So not to say that they can't be linked, inextricably, but I think it's important to sort those things out. And so, given that 72% of black children are born or raised in single parent households, let me give you some information here that I also found on the web. This is from an organization called Darkness to Light. They actually cite academic studies on this, so this is not just them sort of spewing information without reference. But they say that family structure actually is the most important risk factor in child sexual abuse. Children who live with two married biological parents are at a very low risk of abuse. The risk increases when children live with step parents or a single parent. Children living without either parent, foster children, are 10 times more likely to be sex abuse victims than children who live with both biological parents. Children who live with a single parent that has a live in partner are at the highest risk. They are 20 times more likely to be victims of child sex abuse than children living with their biological parents. They also said that gender is an important factor. Females are 5 times more likely to be abused than males. The age of the male being abused plays a part. 8% of victims aged 12 to 17 are male. 26% of victims under the age of 12 are male. Let's see here. Let me see if there's anything else. Race and ethnicity, they say, are an important factor. African American children have almost twice the risk of sexual abuse than white children. So I mean, when you see these facts, it almost seems to me that it's important to just have this conversation. What's interesting to me is I almost wonder when people get offended when you bring this up, like they get mad, oh, you're judging me, stop judging me, whatever. I wonder if it's because they feel bad, they because it's like, oh gosh, I made this mistake. You're rubbing it in. It's already hard. Well, is there a way to prevent the mistake? I mean, or do we just, because the thing is, if you talk to someone who hasn't put themselves in that category yet, who hasn't had that first child, who hasn't, created that first complicated situation, some of those people will look at someone like you and say, oh, you're just being too serious. Oh, it's just sex. I'm just hanging out with this guy. It's just sex. And I just tell my daughters, there's no such thing as just sex. Sex creates children. And so I'm not telling you not to do it, but I am telling you there are consequences, and I can't feel sorry for you when the consequences come home to roost. And your child will suffer if you don't pick a man who's going to be a good father. And the same thing with fathers, of course. If I had sons, I'd tell them the same thing. So, how do you think we can approach this conversation in a way that doesn't lead to World War III and have people thinking that one choice is just the same as any other choice? They're not the same choice.
Right. One of the things that I find myself saying a lot is that motherhood doesn't start when your child is born. It starts even before, or at least being a responsible parent doesn't start when a child is born. It starts even before. And I'm not talking about eating the right foods while you're pregnant or not drinking and smoking while you're pregnant. I'm talking about even further back of looking who you're involved with and seeing how that person will impact your life going forward. And always understanding that if you're involved with that person, there's the probability that that person will be a part of your life because you're co-parenting or not co-parenting. So that's the first thing, is we always have to look at the fact that parenting starts way before you even become a parent. Then the second thing is we have to have the conversation, because responsible behavior honestly has been shown to decrease when people are constantly having the conversation. So there's no two ways about it. The conversation has to take place.
Well, a couple things I'll throw in here is just the final kicker here. And I'll tell you, this is a hard conversation for me just because there are some people where you can't bring this up without them thinking you're judging them. And then it becomes a gender war between men and women. The women say, oh, these men are abandoning their kids. And I picked the baby daddy, but I didn't pick him. I didn't know that he was going to do what he did after the baby was born. And then the fathers are saying, oh, these women, they're sleeping with the thugs and having babies with guys who are irresponsible. And I'm just not, I don't think the gender war is beneficial to anybody, because you can't blame the whole female race for your family situation. You can't blame all men for the fact that you chose to sleep with that man, right? And make a
Right.
baby with that guy who now doesn't pay child support, doesn't even care about his kids, isn't spending any time with them, and your kids are growing up unhappy. I think this is just honest dialogue that has to be laid out there. The other thing I'll throw out there is, I'll tell you this, and it's important. Again, I don't even care how people feel one way or the other. I have to say, well, actually, scratch that. I do care, because if I didn't care, I wouldn't have even said I don't care. So I do care about how people feel about me saying this. So I'll say this as respectfully as possible, but I have to give the truth. I knew a cop who used to work in children. What was it? Violence against children cases, or whatever they call it. It was in the
Special Victims Unit.
yeah, special victims unit, whatever they call it, crimes against children. That's what he called it in his division. And this is the kind of job where cops who do this job for more than a couple of years, first of all, they tell them not to do it more than a couple of years, because no matter how long they do the job, they usually need therapy afterward. After they've seen
Yeah,
just
become suicidal.
yeah, after they see the horrible things that people do to kids when they're left vulnerable. And one thing that this cop said to me, and I talked to another cop about the same issue, and he confirmed it. He said every single day I would go have to review a case of some child that was sexually abused while by the mother's boyfriend. And in most of these cases, the mother had no clue that this was happening. She's going off to work,
Mhm.
leaving her kids with this guy. He's doing all this stuff to her kids. She finds out years later. He said it's happened so many times I can't even count. And so it would be irresponsible for me not to share this with people, especially if you are a single parent and you have a child at home. you have to listen. You can't take things so personally that you put your children in harm's way because you're so mad about being offended because somebody has questioned your choices, right? And I'm not even questioning people's choices. I'm just saying, understand that there's no such thing as a choice without consequence, and you can't just sort of say, well, it's just sex, or I'm just sleeping with this person and it's no big deal. No, it can become a very big deal very, very quickly. So that's my last point of the issue. I'll let you get the last word, Nomalanga.
Yeah, and as if that were not horrible enough, it's not the only thing that that child will have to deal with, or those children have to deal with. They have to deal with perpetual poverty because that other statistic that you mentioned, where the average what is the average wealth of a black woman is only $5. That just means that she's spending a lot of her life and her child's life clawing her way through and fighting poverty. And that's not a good quality of life, not for her and not for her kids. So the question does have to be asked, if you can prevent that, why wouldn't you? And the notion that you shouldn't talk about it because it just happens is, to me, it seems almost absurd, because you should have to talk about it and you should have the conversation, hopefully before it happens. And even if it is after the fact, you would think that if you're a person who's already in the position, then you'd be vocal about, look, this situation is tough, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody else, rather than defending it and trying to normalize it. And again, the list goes on and on and on. Who wants to do something by themselves that we all know would be done better if there were two people involved, whether it's lifting, pushing, whatever? If two people are what's necessary to do it, why would you want to do it by yourself? So then we have to go back to, why are you doing it by yourself? And was there a point where you were making a decision, good or bad? And can you make a different decision? So the conversation definitely has to be had. And I say it all the time. I can't for the life of me imagine how hard it must be to be a woman. I have two kids, about to have three, and I have a fourth who's a stepdaughter. I can't for the life of me imagine what it would be like to try and do that all by myself, and try to homeschool them, and try to work, and try to, give them the love and attention and so forth. I can't imagine doing all that by myself, and I don't understand why anybody would defend that, rather than say it is hard. It's where I am right now, but let me be truthful about it. It's hard, and it should not be this way. There's a better way. And that's what I say. It's just a better way. And we don't have to defend something just because we've normalized something that's actually dysfunctional.
Well, what I will say is that I think it is important to speak on the issue. I don't think anybody has to feel judged by it, per se. I think that it's okay to judge yourself to a point, and to kind of ask yourself if you are or have made the best choices. And but then also, even deeper than that, there's something to be said about discipline and intelligent decision making, and being responsive to the call for discipline in terms of how you choose to structure your life. There are a lot of people I've seen where, if you come and have these hard conversations with them about, selecting the right partners, really being thoughtful about the situations you put yourself in, they don't want to hear that. They want to get mad at you. They want to tell you to shut up, or, oh, you're being too serious, or, oh, it's just sex. And but I'm sitting here thinking, why did you wait? You let him have access to your vagina because he had swag, or because you thought he was fun and funny to hang out with, and so after 2 weeks you decided to put risk your life with this person? I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand it. Same thing with guys. I look at the guys and I say, so because she was cute, you decided to have sex with her on the first date, and now you got this horrible baby mama, and you're complaining to me about it, and you expect me to feel sorry for you? No, just because she's pretty, that does not. There's no law saying that you have to have sex with a pretty girl just because she offered it to you. So, at the end of the day, I think that we have to remember that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That old saying. And what I find in the black community is that some of us are very resistant to disciplined choices. Whether you talk about education, whether you talk about food, whether you talk about sex, and all these little pleasures that make us, sort of feel comfortable in the moment. I see a lot of very short-sighted thinking, and we just can't do that. You have to think long term. Every choice you make, when you pick up that fried chicken leg, there's gonna be a consequence. So don't come telling me that you're praying to Jesus that Big Mama ain't gonna get her foot cut off from diabetes when you were enjoying Sunday dinner together for the last 30 years. What did you think was going to happen? And I think that that's where we have to really assess our culture and really look at who we are and make the best choices we can as individuals. So it's not to say anybody's being judged here. I'm sure there will be people who will think that this is an uppity conversation or whatever, but you know what? We need to have some of these uppity conversations because we need to be a community that's headed upward and not downward, and not sinking to the lowest common denominator, not thinking that we're just a victim of circumstances, not thinking that we're just creatures of habit. We are not farm animals. Farm animals react on instinct. We are human beings who are capable of intelligent, structured, and disciplined choices. So be smart with your life because it's your life and you're going to have to deal with the consequences. That's it. I hope I didn't say too much.
No, you hit the nail on the head. And said more succinctly what I want to say anyway. So I don't disagree with you saying what you're saying at all.
All right, all right. Well, we're done. We'd love to hear what you guys think. Once again, this is Mrs. Nomalanga Mushali Moses, founder of HealthyBlackWoman.com, and me. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. Please leave some comments. Tell us what you think. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye bye.